Hi, guys, and welcome to the first ever episode of Side Dish here at the Maniacs Meat Bar. I'm Mike. You can catch me over on the Maniacs Meat podcast at PA Brew News along with Josh and Paul. And today, for the first ever episode, we are going to be serving up Near Dark. Near Dark is a 1987 horror film featuring Bill Paxton along with Lance Hendrickson, Adrian Pastar, and Jenny Wright. It was directed by Catherine Bigelow, who did films such as Point Break and what I think is a very underrated film, Strange Days, which is a horror, thriller, sci-fi kind of film from the 90s. We're going to be doing Near Dark today in honor of the 4th anniversary of Bill Paxton's death, which was a great loss, I think, not just for horror films and science fiction films, but for acting in general. I mean, Bill Paxton really did some great work. I mean, he was in, as far as I'm concerned, 3 of the best science fiction films, or even horror films, if you want to classify them as that have been made. I mean, he plays Hudson in Aliens. He's in Predator 2. He even was in the first Terminator film. If you think back to it, not everybody remembers this, but Bill Paxton is the mugger punk kind of guy at the at the place where Arnold shows up, and he's actually the one that Arnold beats up and takes the clothing off of. But Near Dark is a film about a kind of a country boy named Colby who gets turned into a vampire. Some of the unique things I find about this film, and if you go over to the Maniacs Meat podcast for our decade in review, the 1987 year, this was my choice for that year. But Josh actually brought up a very good point in that podcast, that in this film, they never actually refer to themselves as vampires. I think one of the great things about this movie is not only that, but it really kind of took the idea of vampires as being smooth and cool and generally kind of pristine, which you saw a lot, and it made them very gritty. This is a dark, it's the late 80s. It's just got that great grime to it that you don't really find in films today, really in any films today, not just horror films. This film, I feel like, should really be on any horror fan's list of movies to see. It's a wonderful vampire movie. I think it's very underrated. Everybody always goes to Interview or God forbid, Twilight, which happens sometimes, but that's a whole other discussion to have. But this film for vampire movies for me is right up there on the top. I mean, I am a big fan of Interview. I do like Interview with the Vampire. But this, I think I would almost take this vampire movie pretty well over all the others. Even some of the hidden gems out there, like Martin, or I believe Let the Right Ones In, or Let the Right One In. I can't remember the title exactly. It's a foreign film, but you should definitely check that one out as well. This movie has some wonderful moments in it. Comedically, dark comedy wise. But the scene that always kind of sticks in my head is towards the beginning. They're burning the RV that they were driving around, and they're burning it down. And Bill Paxton turns to Lance Henderson's character and says, "Remember that fire we started in Chicago?" as the RV is burning, which I just, every time, always good for a chuckle. As far as horror fans go, I think there's going to be some things in this that you'll really appreciate. I know for me, I've always loved the the makeup effects on the actors when they're burnt by the sun. There's a lot of just like great grit and char on the faces. Some of the most iconic pictures I know. I believe it's right on the front here. Yeah, this particular photo of Bill Paxton I always recall from being a child and seeing it. If I remember correctly, this was on the cover of the original Near Dark VHS tape. That's the picture that I recall seeing as a child in the video stores, and I always wanted uh, to watch it. Never got a chance to, but as a kid, I didn't take heed to the name of the actual movie, and it wasn't until years later that I actually got a chance to watch Near Dark, and it was totally worth it. And I'm actually glad that I watched this as I got older as opposed to when I was younger, because I feel like I appreciate this movie a lot more now, especially now at this point, than I would have at the time. Uh, like I was saying, this film's got some wonderful scenes, some wonderful moments in it, some wonderful even like side actors that you're going to see and you might not be able to place right away, but you're definitely going to look at them and go, "Hey, it's that guy." The There's a undercover police officer in this, a plainclothes officer, I should say, who you'll recognize from Frighteners by Peter Jackson, which is again a wonderful movie. Um, this film also has one of my favorite kind of moments in a horror film where they go into a bar and start kind of roughing people up. It's a very enjoyable scene. It's just a lot of solid moments. This film, I feel like, is just solid all around. Uh, Not a whole lot of, not a whole lot of moments where I felt let down in watching the film. I felt like it always builds. I feel like it always builds. I feel like it keeps you engaged in the movie, and just the like I said, the grit and the grime, and it just feels like a good movie. It's one of those movies that when you put it in and you sit down to watch it, you feel good. There's something about this film that just makes you feel good, and I think there's this a magic to some of the older films. I think, especially from the '80s, that you can't really capture anymore today. At least I've had a hard time finding it. Where you'll put them in and it just feels right. You're like, yes, this was what I was looking for. This is what I needed right now. Um, that being said, this film, like I said, I wanted to do this for the fourth anniversary of Bill Paxton's death. I kind of rushed doing this first episode of Side Dish. I'm not exactly sure how I want to set up the layout for it, but I wanted to get this out today for Bill Paxton, and for all the wonderful things that he did for uh, not just horror and science fiction films, but film in general. I mean, he really ran the gamut of um, of genres and styles. I mean, you go. He was in Chet. He played Chet in Weird Science, John Hughes films. Does Near Dark. Does Twister. I mean, he was even in westerns. He did Tombstone, which I'm not a big western guy, but I enjoy Tombstone. Um, Bill Paxton, phenomenal actor. Near Dark, phenomenal film. Like I said, my top pick films for the year 1987. I think as a horror fan, this should definitely be on your list of movies to watch and really try and get into. At least give it a really good, solid viewing. I think for a horror fan, this film is going to be around a 7.5. Let's say 7.5 for a horror fan. If you're a vampire fan, it's going to be higher than that, I think. For your average viewer, I still think this film is probably like around a 5 or a 6. I think this film is relatable to anybody that's just looking for a good, solid horror film, even if they're not a horror fan. It's not over the top as far as gore or like freaking people out or anything. It's just a good horror movie, and I think one of the very best vampire films made. I would at least put it in the top 3 for me as far as vampire films that I would choose to watch. So, as I said, I'm Mike. This is the Maniacs Meet Bar and the first episode of Side Dish. You can catch me again over on the Maniacs Meet podcast at PA Brew News. And that gives you a little something to chew on until our next episode over at Maniacs Meet. Thanks and cheers.